Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Swipe in the City. You've got Marie
And Michelle in the house, Studio 2.
or Studio B. Back when I was dancing like at my old studio in Chicago, we called it Studio A, Studio B, and then we had a Studio C. And I just found out yesterday that they closed. So I'm a little sad.
That is sad.
Yeah. That's where I spent 14 years of my life.
Yeah, that's really sad. I got sad. There was a gym here that I went to for like 2 months and they closed down.
Oh man.
I was pretty
2 months.
Well, they had like the format that I like. It was like definitely a lifting gym, but they had more open gym where you can come in and do your own thing rather than classes.
Yeah.
They also had all the like strongman toys like tires and blocks and things that nobody who listens to this would be familiar with. But
I'm
so,
like, you like those?
I was excited to like build my strength back up, and then they closed, and now I just did cardio on the elliptical for 30 minutes today, so that's where we're at.
Hey, that's something. Good for you.
Yeah, it's something.
Did they close because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I guess their rent was being raised, like in the middle of the pandemic, their rent was being raised like 40 or 50% or something.
Oh my God.
Like that's what we can do. I mean, people are like canceling their memberships.
Right.
Coming in.
They can't.
Nothing we can do. So
Yeah.
it was pretty sad.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Well, R.I.P. to the places we once knew. Not to start off on a really sad note, but
our topic today is people and places we once knew.
Wow, that's really dark.
Just kidding. Before we jump into the topic, though, how are you? What's going on?
Well, since now we're in the habit of saying days, it's a Tuesday. Yeah, we have random days. That way you guys know that our brains are either fully functional or still kind of in work mode. Um, and we're getting ready for, kind of a Marie's going to be out, then Michelle's going to be out, and now we speak in third person. Um, just vacation time. So we're trying to get as many episodes out as we can. So yeah, I mean, I'm busy. Work has been busy in a good way. And I'm just really productive. But how are you?
Pretty good. Yeah, work has been busy in a not in a not good way, but in more of the just dealing with like not even with bullshit, just dealing with more complex deals. And so being services based, there's a lot of I hate it when I have to bug a bunch of people to get a solid answer on something because I'm taking up their time or their slack and whatever. And so it's like those weeks where I feel like I'm chasing down answers and I don't just have like a spreadsheet that tells me exactly what I need. Or just I feel like those are more draining than weeks where I'm just going like call to call to call.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
It'll get worked out though.
It makes you feel like you're not the expert in what you do, and especially being like in sales, if you want to do well,
yeah,
you got to be the expert. So
we'll be good though. We'll get caught up, and
yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited. We've got some trips coming up, and
much needed vacations.
And we'll still be releasing weekly, but we'll have a little bit of a break from recording, which I think will be nice after the sprint.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, I'm stoked to. I'm going to Vegas and Chicago, which I know I've mentioned on past episodes. And Michelle, I don't think you've told people where you're going, really.
I am going to Maui to visit Daniela Hannah 68.
Hi, Mom.
So yeah, I'm really excited. It was going to be a 5-day trip, and somehow it got booked as an 8-day trip. So
well,
I have some logistics to figure out there, but really excited, and I think I'm gonna actually take that full time off.
You should.
Which is gonna be much needed, and I think it's tough for me to do that, but like during the holidays, I was still on and off, and so I think it'll be nice to just do beach shopping and.
Your mom's gonna love it.
Drinking fancy cocktails.
Oh, hell yeah.
For sure.
I know, I feel so sorry that instead of 5 days, it's 8. I'm so sad for you.
No, such a bummer.
Yeah. Oh, you poor thing. World's smallest violin here.
Speaking of, I was gonna jump in.
You want to talk about what we're drinking, or rather you, I guess? I guess I'll go grab one in a sec.
This is we think the brand is Real. and it's just a hard seltzer that Marie actually picked out.
Shocking.
Shocking, but it's a melon cucumber one, and it's really refreshing.
Yeah, I just I can't drink White Claw. I'm not quite that basic, but it gives me a headache. But I started drinking Vizzies, and I really like those, and they didn't have them. So this was a nice. I was really surprised because I feel like seltzers, when you buy a brand you've never heard of, it's either fantastic or it tastes like ugh, just
Yeah.
horrible. So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. But I'm excited for today's topic because this was decided at the pool this weekend when we were listening to some throwback jams per DJ Michelle. You want to intro it?
Sure. Yeah. So this is going to be another dating best practices episode. We've been having a lot of fun with these lately. So, and it is no scrubs, but it's spelled KNOW. So, how to know scrubs, how to identify them. I don't know if we have any like advice on how to get away from them because I think I'm still working on that. See them, but I'm not as much of an expert as like getting away from them. But we'll come up with some good ideas for
And we
y'all.
have some great stories. So
That is that is true. Cool. Well, do you want to maybe kick us off with some of these definitions that you pulled here?
yeah, I mean, as always, we have to start with something from Urban Dictionary. So that says a guy who mooches off everyone else and has nothing going for him in life, probably still lives with his mom, doesn't have a car, a job, or a plan. And I think that aligns very nicely with the No Scrubs lyrics.
It does. It does. And so for those who haven't heard this one, which would be
I'm so sorry. Go listen to it right now. Pause the podcast.
yeah, go listen to it. I'm not going to sing it, but the TLC definition.
A scrub is a guy that thinks he's fly. I can't sing. Never mind.
You're good to sing. Go for it.
And is also known as a buster. Always talking about what he wants and just sits on his broke ass. Oh.
And then it goes into the chorus. So
I'm no saint.
yeah, I know. We should have had her like pre-recorded.
I thought about texting her actually.
But yeah, so I think that's in line with it. This is an interesting one. Merriam-Webster, a person of insignificant size or standing. I definitely don't feel like that's in line with like the modern use of the term.
I think it's the polite way of saying it.
I feel like it means it literally, someone who's like a small person.
No, like, well, I guess that's physical size, but standing is like, if they're of insignificant standing, like, they're.
Oh, you're thinking, okay.
Yeah, like I was about to say they're a scrub.
Okay. Yeah,
They don't have a job, they don't have a goal, they don't, have any status, right? Standing and status are like equivalent.
I just figured they were clowning on short people.
I mean, they might be.
It could be a mix.
So does that make me a scrub?
I wouldn't say you're of insignificant size.
Oh, thank you. It's the nicest thing you've ever said to me, Michelle.
I know. I'm just such a treat. But maybe we save this last definition for the end. We can wrap up with that one.
Yeah, this one's a little bit longer. Anybody who stayed this long and sat through my singing, thank you. So Michelle, when we kind of started kind of thinking through some of this outside of the pool, one of the things you mentioned is like other people can see the scrubness or the scrubbiness.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, no scrubs, right? So we're like talking about some of the signs so you identify it,
right?
Which I don't know. I guess feel kind of straightforward, but also not. But one thing that I was thinking about when we were talking about this is when you think that the person that you're dating is just like super awesome, and maybe it's because they're really attractive or something like that, and so you are kind of like blindsided or not looking for these scrubby tendencies or scrubby
or ignoring
or just straight up ignoring them.
Yeah,
which I feel like when you're really attracted to someone,
Mhm.
that's when, or if you feel like they're like out of your league in certain ways, I feel like
Or
that's,
stigmatized.
or digmatized. I feel like those are times when you just kind of like put aside some of these other like standards you have or other things that
Yeah.
you look for. And so, like, have you ever been in a situation where you were like casually dating or seeing a scrub and you were not aware, like hyper aware of it, but other people notice and would try to maybe tell you?
I feel like that's happened to me a lot. Like, well, and especially, like, in my youth.
Yeah, of course.
That makes me
Yeah.
sound so damn old, but, like, I just remember, like, I had a lot of friends, high school, college, that would be like, "Oh, he's so out of your or you're so out of his league."
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, "Well, personally, I don't necessarily subscribe to, like, one league or another. I just think that's kind of rude."
Yeah. No, I know what you're
Um,
saying.
but, like, I'm trying to think of, like, a specific guy. Oh, well, hopefully he doesn't listen, but, one of my exes, who I think I've mentioned on this podcast before, um, yeah, my mom definitely thought he was a scrub. He, got kicked out of the army for, DWI.
Oh.
Yeah, and I didn't think anybody could get kicked out of the army, to be honest with you.
You actually can. There's a lot of reasons you can get like kicked out of the military, but
Yeah, well, and like, so he and I mean, I stayed with him after that, which like, that was me just blinded by. We had, I mean, now at this point, I think I've known him since I was like 16. So we've known each other for a very long time. Like we had a lot of history together. He was great in bed. And good lord, like my mom, if she knew no scrubs, like she would have just been playing it every time we get in the car.
just over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what about you, Michelle? Any like friends that have kind of friends or family tell you something you didn't want to hear about a dude you were seeing?
Um, I feel like it's happened more so like in hindsight.
Mm,
So, um, like definitely again in my younger days, like dated guys with like massive lack of ambition.
mm,
Hence why that is such a big thing for me now and something
mm.
that I look at really early on. Um,
Yeah,
but I think, back in the day, like, oh, well, and again, we also have to keep in mind when you're dating someone when you're 20
it's
or
hard to
18 or
measure drive.
16, and it's
Yeah.
also like, if you're 16, not that we have anyone that listens at 16, but
God, I hope not.
when you're 16, I mean, does it, like, that person's gonna grow and change?
Right.
Does it really matter? I mean, I think there are still ways they can be scrubby,
Sure.
like scrubby enough not to be worth your time at that age, but um, it would kind of be in hindsight that people would say, "Oh, well, you were doing this, 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 and that, and they were just kind of over here,
There.
like unemployed or working, 10 hours a week or whatever
Yeah.
it is," and kind of pointing it out after the fact. But I don't think I've ever been in a situation where uh, I was like actively seeing someone consistently and had people really like call it out to me.
Do you ever wish that they would have said something to you? Like maybe you wouldn't have dated him as long or like,
I go back and forth with it
mhm,
because I'm also really stubborn.
same.
And so I feel like when people point out those things, if I'm not already leaning towards realizing it or considering it or maybe
Mhm.
making a decision, then it's more so like, you know, not believing it, being like, oh, well, they don't, maybe they don't know this other
Yeah.
side of them or whatever it is.
They don't know them like I
They
do.
don't know. And I think too, when it comes to, it's really interesting is when it comes to your friends and what they may or may not point out is it's always really important to remember to use like for example, if you're dating someone, I need to use the lens of like what's best for you and your style and what you
Mhm.
want and not take into consideration like, oh, by my
Yeah.
scorecard or standards. They're like a scrub in these areas, and that's not necessarily the case for because you're looking for something that's different or you're looking at different attributes.
Well, I mean, some of these things that I think we're going to talk about are kind of like yes or no, right? Like you're
Right.
ambitious or you're not. Like you have a job or you don't. Or like if you don't have a job, you're actively trying to find one, etc.
Yeah.
But like we've kind of touched at least in real life. On, I don't know if we've talked about it on the show, but like we've talked about how you and I do have different types. So like it is important if either of us were going to say something about the other person's date that we remember that like okay, like Marie likes this and Shell likes this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day though, I think we both want somebody with some
Oh, definitely.
drive.
Well, and I think, like you mentioned too, it's a really good point. A lot of what you brought up that we're going to cover are things that, like, that's just a scrub.
Right.
That's
Like
not, it's not like personality type or those types of things. It's
I've
just
got
like,
brown hair, I've got red hair.
yeah,
Like it's not like that. It's or something more abstract. Yeah.
yeah,
So hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, maybe this helps
right?
someone somewhere.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just us
Or maybe it
bullshitting.
helps
Yeah.
us. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we work through
Maybe
some
this is
shit
just us
tonight.
talking. Yeah. No, but so with the ambition one, I think pretty definitively someone who, like, doesn't have a job or source of income and isn't actively trying,
Yeah.
like, that's a scrub
Right.
on either side, like male, female.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there are some exceptions, like if you're married with kids, and
I was
that's like
literally gonna bring that up. I was
that's
gonna
like
ask.
that's your job,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's
You're the
that
homemaker.
obviously is like what we're referring to here. But I think, yeah. Although too, but it's really interesting, right? Because like during the pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs,
Hmm.
and in some industries there weren't jobs to be had.
Right.
And some people pivoted, some didn't. But so I think even though we are like kind of definitive on that, it's putting like an asterisk and saying like not including some of these situations that are completely out of the person's control.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, whether or not, like when I lost my job during the pandemic, um, when I went into that major depressive state, that I feel like kind of doesn't count. But like there was still at the end of the day, like inside me, I am still a driven person who wants like the reason I was depressed was because I I like having a job and I like being busy and having something to do because it gives me purpose. So to me, this is like a person without that drive or ambition being a scrub. Like they're just kind of floating around.
Yeah,
And one of the things we said is like they come off like they're put together, but they're really not. And so it's like they're giving off this illusion that they have their life together, but really they have no idea what they want. And they're just kind of like floating from day to day, not even putting forth the effort to figure it out.
yeah, I agree. Well, and what that one kind of reminded me of is there's this show on, or no, it's actually a movie on Netflix, and I'm gonna butcher her name. It's the comedian Liza Scherzinger.
Eliza Schlesinger.
Yeah,
I just watched that
that
movie
movie.
with also Margaret Cho.
Yeah,
Oh my god, I watched that last weekend. It was so funny.
it's so good. And so for context, and this is where I thought of like they're coming off put together. This guy, and this is
Yeah,
based. What's wild is this is based on a true story.
I know. This literally based on like her life.
But it's this guy who's also like a pathological liar. So
Yeah.
we have some other considerations that aren't necessarily
Definitely, definitely some mental health like
yeah.
issues, maybe multiple, probably not multiple personalities, but something wrong with him.
But he presented himself as going to this like particular college, being in finance,
Said he was from Yale.
all of this, which is obviously a pretty exaggerated like version of this, but it could be someone who presents themselves as maybe being like much more successful in their job than they are, or um present, I don't know, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's more of them using like white lies or
Yeah.
exaggerations. Like I used to have a friend that would basically always just exaggerate their like job title. Like if they were working in a restaurant at any level, they would make it sound like they were like a manager
Oh,
or
okay.
like running a department or things like that.
Right.
And so that's where I think of when people kind of come off as having this persona, and then over time you start to realize
That they don't.
that they don't. And then there's, like we said, the lying piece is also a little
Mhm.
different that sneaks in there. But
Yeah. I saw a lot of that at GoDaddy, to be honest with you. Freaking salespeople. And like, and I mean, it's like literally they're selling you on themselves,
right,
right? So, um, but yeah, I mean, and it was interesting because when I first started there, it was like, everything was like shiny, and anybody that kind of talked to me was like, oh, like, let me give you like my wisdom because you're new and you're fresh out of training and you don't know what the hell's going on. And the more, obviously, the longer I was there and sales, and especially the way that GoDaddy was set up, like everybody's performance was available for everyone. We saw a stack rank. We got emailed a stack rank every morning of where every single person was and how much money they'd earned so far in commission. So there really wasn't any hiding, but there were still, it blows my mind to this day that there were still so many people who acted like they were hot shit and they did not have the numbers to prove it.
that doesn't surprise me,
No, no.
especially again in sales. I feel like there was another example of this that happened to me recently. I think, well, when someone tries to present themselves as like an entrepreneur,
Uh,
or like, oh, I do this and that and this, and it's like of course, there are people that do
yes.
have like multiple businesses and hustles. I mean, self included, right?
Right, right.
But it was kind of one of those things where it's like it doesn't sound like any of these things are successful. Otherwise,
Mhm.
why would you? They were all very different. Like he owns a pedicab and like drives a pedicab, and then apparently also is like a personal trainer, and then also
Hmm.
supposedly works in construction. And there were like
Those are very different.
well, so that's the other thing, and there were like one or two other sources of income. And I'm like, this doesn't
God,
feel cohesive.
his taxes must suck. Like
I
having
don't know if this guy was paying taxes.
there, that's fair.
This guy was paying taxes. But yeah, yeah. He's cute though.
I
To go to
mean,
our
there you
earlier
go.
point.
You're blinded by the scrub.
Blinded by these scrubs.
Oh man.
Um, I'm I'm curious on your take on this one. So, no friends or few friends? Like, what's your thought on this?
I think that's tough, especially when you're dating dudes, because at least something that like I've noticed, I mean, guys typically don't befriend people the same way that women do. Um, and I personally like, there are some guys, right, that have a ton of friends, male, female friends, like all over. They go out all the time, whatever. Fantastic. Like they're kind of honestly, personality wise, more like frat guys to me. And I mean, we see these guys all over Rainy West, etc. Um, but I think a lot of guys, I mean, that's honestly, at least in terms of guys I've interacted with, the frat guy type is like a quarter, maybe a third. And then 2/3 of guys that I've like interacted with keep a much tighter circle. So at that point, it kind of comes down to the way that they interact with those friends and how close they are.
Mm.
And then honestly, the other thing I look at is their relationship with their family. Because like if they're not close to their family, then I want to know why.
Hmm.
Because I do see that 9 times out of 10 as a red flag.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The family one I'll kind of like come back to
Yeah.
because I think that could be a little bit trickier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the friends thing, I feel like a lot of, like you said, a lot of guys do have like smaller circles and they're like content with that, or they're more like introverted or whatever, and that's obviously
Yeah.
different. But I think one of the things that's a red flag is, um, like, if their friends kind of, like, talk shit about them,
Oh.
either to you or to your friends or whatever the case may be.
Well, like there's a difference though between like when guys kind of like bust each other's balls
No,
and when they're actually talking shit. Just to clarify,
yeah,
like for anybody
yeah.
listening.
No, I'm thinking more of, like, it was on one of the episodes of probably You Up that I was listening to,
Probably.
maybe J Train. But someone had written in about how she was out at a bar and was talking to this
It
guy,
woke you
like,
up.
group of friends. Also, we listen to the same, most of the same podcasts.
Yeah.
And that, like, multiple of his friends were, like, kind of, like, warned her, like,
Yeah.
he's not, they didn't give her details, but they're like, hey, he's not a good guy, you deserve
Yeah.
better. And guys, like, girls will
Guys don't do
girls
that.
will do that without any prompting.
Right.
And
right.
even typically, I feel like actually when girls do that, it's usually
bullshit.
It's usually bullshit. Or
yeah, it's usually they're jealous.
Anything else.
Yeah.
But for guys to do that is interesting. So, I think that, or even, there was like a situation where I was kind of talking to this guy, and his friend, I don't think his friend realized, like, that I was talking to him. It's kind of a weird dynamic. But I don't think his friend realized that I was talking to him and to someone else, like, made a comment about, like, how many girls he talks to, and, like, that he was, like, outside of the venue talking to his girlfriend, and there was this, like, whole back and forth on that. And so, but again, and it was said with, like, a negative connotation, though.
Right, like, oh, this is a playboy.
This is a playboy.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess isn't necessarily a scrub, but I just mean that idea of, if the people who are supposed to be there, like, friends and supporters, are doing that, or if, again, like, if they're always around new people and there are no constants, and there's kind of like that weird, like, energy, I feel like they could be scrubby.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a good point too, like, a playboy or a fuckboy, like, can also be a scrub, but not necessarily, like, because we've already done, I was thinking about this earlier, I was like, well, you know what, we already did an episode on fuckboys and how to spot a fuckboy. But then I was like, I thought about it again, and I was like, nah, this is way different. Like, there's different facets to it, and this, I think, has more to do with that person internally than like what they're doing. Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think, like, at its core, I think of a fuckboy as someone who, I mean, there's, like, two types. Like, someone who just, like, has, like, bad intentions. Like, they just don't care.
They don't give a shit.
Doing whatever the fuck they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone who, not necessarily that, but also someone who maybe is just, like, really into commitment or some of these other things.
Well, and a fuckboy can have a great job. He can be driven.
Yeah.
He can be very successful, which is all the things, like, I feel like those are some of the most defining things about a scrub.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So you can be a fuckboy and a scrub, or you can be a scrub and not a fuckboy, or a fuckboy and not a scrub.
God.
So, because you can be a scrub and treat people wonderfully and not have bad intentions.
Yeah, definitely.
But just maybe you don't really have your life together.
Right. Maybe you just want to kind of coast by off whoever and whatever. Can happen.
It can happen.
And speaking of, like, one of the other traits on here we have is a scrub is codependent, or he's just straight up dependent on somebody other than himself. And so, like, codependence, that's dependent on another person and their relationship. And then dependent, I kind of segment out as, like, I don't know, like, I see that more as, like, being dependent on your parents, to be honest with you. Like, that might not be the best description, but
that's what I think of.
Yeah.
For the sake of this podcast.
Sure.
Today.
We'll keep it simple. We'll ask Mark later to
We also always retain our right to change our definitions of things.
Of course.
So on our next episode we might redefine it.
Yeah, it's our prerogative as women.
Yeah, no, definitely someone who is dependent on their parents, like, financially, living at home past a certain age
Right.
and time frame of, or like if you're living with your parents longer because you're in an extended program in school,
Yeah. Grad
or
school, whatever.
like again, pandemic, right? People had
Right.
to move back
A
home,
lot of people move back.
housing, things like that. I lived at home on and off for a long time because um, I was going to school in Portland, but then I technically lived in my parents' home because they moved to Maui. So I was renting from them, but for like periods of time when they were in town, I was living with them.
But they weren't actually living with you.
Right,
You were just living on their property,
right,
which is like mostly different.
right.
Yeah. And
But
I mean, honestly, like if my mom was gonna let me do that, I'd say hell yeah. Like free rent? Are you kidding me?
yeah.
Honestly, my mom would probably charge me rent. Love her.
But yeah, so in terms of being dependent, this actually kind of ties in with another one I added, being like a mooch.
Mm.
So I feel
Yeah,
like
that's the non psychological way to put
right,
it.
right, that's like the behavior rather than the personality trait. But I feel like we all know those, like those people, right? It doesn't have to just be,
Yeah.
again, we don't want to keep this strictly to guys or girls, but
I mean, it could be a friend.
yeah, or a friend.
Your friend who's always like, "Oh yeah, you'll get this round, right? You'll get this round."
Or they always like
Everyone knows someone like
they've
that.
always like lost their card or whatever,
Yeah.
like over and over again, where it's like this, you gotta like strap that to your body.
Right. Like, I need a ride. I need this. I need
Yeah,
that. Like,
and never like reciprocates.
right. Right.
So I think of uh again, going back to the pedicab guy, whose number has been deleted from my phone,
Thank God.
by the way. His number has been deleted. But we were grabbing, yeah, we were like grabbing food or something. And I guess he'd been out the night before. And when he goes out, he like doesn't take his cards and his wallet. See, also,
But why wouldn't you take your money when you're going out?
I don't know. This is also, if someone's has to explain something past like a really brief reasoning,
Right.
probably a scrub and also a fuckboy. But so yeah, it wasn't until we were like getting food, he's like, "Oh, I'll Venmo you." Was that cool?
Oh
And
God.
I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Whatever. Sure, we're here."
He's probably also a drug dealer and just has all of his money in a Venmo balance.
I'm not going to confirm nor deny that. We'll neither confirm nor deny that.
All right.
But so then he goes to Venmo me, and his phone dies.
How convenient. That's so convenient.
Like, I saw it die, but I was just like, this isn't it. This isn't it, Michelle. Like, what are you doing?
Man, just take the L at that point. Like, just pay for the drinks. Don't
Yeah.
ask for a request.
Yeah,
Like,
not even worried
not,
about it. Not
no.
even worried about it.
I'm sure that's how he supports himself is just by dating girls and getting them to pay for his shit. Like, I'll Venmo you. Oh no, my phone died.
Oops.
Oh no, not again.
Oh man.
That's why I should get an iPhone and not an Android.
I'm actually shocked that you didn't put that on here.
To be honest with you, I didn't think about it until just now.
I'm shocked that you didn't put
But
like them having a scrub as like, or them having a scrub, them having an Android as like the first and primary definition of a scrub.
it definitely is scrubby.
I feel like if they still have a flip phone in 2021,
Yeah.
we can use that as our hard line. An Android's not there.
Well, honestly, I would argue that it depends on the type of Android. Not
Okay.
to go into the weeds
Okay.
of smartphones, but like I'll accept like Google Pixel, Galaxy. But like when you've got like the I don't know AT&T brand like fucking Android phone or I mean God bless Motorola, they made great flip phones, but I don't think they made like having used one, I don't think they really make the best smartphones. So just like any of those like knockoff honestly brands, like the big ones fine. I'll accept that you're not a scrub, but
Or what was it that was big? Was it Cricket Wireless? As a
yeah,
provider that
yeah.
was big for a while.
Or yeah, I mean literally just anything that you can't get like a proper app on. Like if you can't download fuck like I don't want to say if you can't download Hinge because then you're not seeing this person. But if you can't download Facebook, Instagram, or use it properly, that's scrubby.
Okay. All right. I'll buy into that. I'll buy into that. Or if it's like a prepaid phone.
Oh,
But then you also might be a drug dealer.
yeah,
Which again
exactly.
is a different another category
That's another
here.
rabbit hole.
This
Yeah.
is we're gonna actually change the title to like, how do you know if the guy you're seeing is a drug dealer?
Are all drug dealers scrubs
No.
or can they not be scrubs? Some are driven. Some run the whole fucking business.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like I feel like and some are very successful. And in
Yeah.
that way,
In their industry.
in their industry, right? So I don't think those two are synonymous either. You learned something today, folks.
I know. I'm glad that we solved that for everybody. Back to dependence.
These are hard questions.
We are.
Yeah, codependent. So this is one that I think is interesting because I feel like it can develop over time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sometimes see it as like a red flag at the very beginning of an interaction, but I feel like over time, I've seen friends date guys or guys date girls, whatever, that like initially they're maybe doing like the 50-50 thing, or initially the person's like showing drive and all that, and then over time they either their scrubbiness comes out because they're not putting on their like best foot forward, or they do just become like more and more dependent and expect things. And then again, that can just happen in general, but I think when their effort to like continue to grow and progress their life because they're just like, oh well, I don't need to now, like this person's
They've got me. They've got my back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, in codependence too, I guess you can be codependent and not necessarily be a scrub. But like I also see codependence as just not even financial, but just a general dependence. Like maybe early on you start like you're hanging out every day. You're at one person or the other's apartment most nights out of the week from a very early stage. Um I also see that as being codependence, and it doesn't necessarily mean one or the other person is a scrub, but it could definitely be a red flag to me. It's also just generally a red flag for me. I like my space.
You?
Me?
Yeah. Shocking. Shocking. Yeah, I think these other two could kind of go together. Like, so, either just like not being grateful for things. I don't
Like they pay for your or you pay for their meal and they don't even say thanks because like you just mentioned like they expect it.
see. I don't know. I don't know that I feel like that one is tied as specifically to being a scrub. Like, I feel like that's more so just again more like
General
more general.
red flag.
Yeah. I think that's like a more general red flag. I mean, it could be a result of some of these other things, like being dependent or being like a mooch. Um,
Well, I mean, how many mooches do you know that are like grateful?
yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. Um, but yeah, I feel like it definitely does tie into some of these other things, but just as a whole, I think about it less relevant to like defining a scrub.
Yeah, I think honestly, like the ones that we've already covered thus far are probably the um, biggest areas for me in terms of defining a scrub. So the rest of these, with the exception of one that we can jump to, I think are more so just like secondary and like orange flags potentially for people to look out for. But like, so we have not confident on here as well as a sign, and I think that's because so we talked about they're portraying themselves as one way, right? That's because they're not confident in who they are.
Mhm.
So for them, and it's also like it's a false. You think they're confident when you first meet them, but it's false confidence. So, and I mean, I personally like. I think confidence is really important. I think that goes right up there with driving ambition. So I definitely think not being confident is very scrubby.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, and I also think that, they may not have the drive to, like, be successful in whatever way that looks like for them, which could then make them, like, insecure and
Mhm.
less confident, which then affects your ability to kind of, like, get that drive or build up that ambition.
Right.
And then there's also, I mean, some people are just it's a spectrum. Like, great, right? Like, some people just aren't as they're really comfortable with, maybe it's like a certain lifestyle,
Yeah.
maybe it's they only want to work 10 hours a week, and if that's all they have to do and they can live in their parents' basement, then that's what they do, or things like that. But I think, yeah, confidence can definitely play a factor, and
Yeah.
affects, again, even like the codependence,
Yeah.
and some of these other things that we're
It's a
talking
domino.
about.
It's a domino thing there.
Totally.
Um, yeah, so I mean, we've got not grateful, not respectful. I mean, to be honest, this one I threw in there just because, like, everybody should just fucking respect one another. It's 2021. I'm over all this bullshit. Like,
You're like, I just really wanted to say it.
and literally, I feel like any negative term that we come up with here, we're just gonna throw not respectful in there.
That's true.
So, because I mean, fuckboys aren't necessarily respectful either.
That is true. That is true. And what was the other one we were talking about? Drug dealers. Drug dealers
Hey, drug
typically
dealers can be super respectful.
they can be. That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
I've known some really respectful, polite drug dealers with families.
Um,
So,
well, it's kind of funny too, because like when I think of drug dealers, there's different sides to it, but like here in Texas, like pot is legal. So technically
right.
speaking, someone who is like making edibles or selling
Hmm.
marijuana, which you can very easily obtain legally in Oregon, like
Hmm.
they are technically a drug dealer.
Yeah.
But then there are also people that are selling harder drugs in sketchy places.
Yes.
And they have a different series of characteristics.
Also true. Also very true. Very true indeed.
So, like, I feel like we talked about a couple of personal experiences. Are there any other, like, stories that came to mind when you were thinking about this topic, or any other specific experiences that you had?
Um. So and so this ended up very very badly. Like he ended up being abusive, but I should have seen the signs earlier on that he was a scrub.
Okay.
Um, so he was in the service industry, which doesn't make you a scrub. I know some very successful people in the service industry. And he made himself out to be one of those very successful people in the service industry. But he like couldn't keep a job long enough. He was like hopping from one bar to the next. He was like living in this like, oh, I was a bartender in Vegas thing, which like, hello, you're in Austin now. Um, and it ended up being like a very codependent thing as well, to where like we were always together and like he didn't have a car, so I was driving him around places because I did. Um, he was like living paycheck to paycheck worse than I was, and I was unemployed, mind you, when we were dating. And I was still better at managing my money than he was, and paying for shit and stuff. So he was a very scrubby, but he's also like a list of other horrible, horrible traits. And
Yeah.
thinking back on it now, I'm trying to figure out what the hell it was that made it so that I couldn't see that.
Maybe it's a conversation with Larry.
Yeah, young and dumb. Yeah, honestly, it'll probably tie back to my dad. I don't know.
Yeah.
I blame everything on him these days. Sorry, Dad. Not sorry. Not sorry. You never apologize. I'm screaming at the ceiling as if he's dead.
He does that in another episode too. Where you're like, he's still alive, but we'll talk about it.
It's fine.
Um,
Everything is fine.
so I talked about this on a likely previous episode. We've recorded it already, but we'll see when it gets released. But I was talking about some of the differences between like guys in Portland versus guys here.
Mm.
Obviously,
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
you've heard the story.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but when I think of Scrub, I think of this one guy. I think we hung out like maybe 2 times, but he did have a job. He was a pizza delivery man,
Mm-hmm.
delivery boy. Not boy, I mean, but like maturity wise.
Sure.
But he didn't have a car, and he lived with at least 4 other people.
Oh, Lord.
And this is like a common thing in Portland, and I don't quite understand it.
So is Portland a city of scrubs? I've never been.
There are a lot of scrubs there. There are some really successful, driven like people, but there are a lot of scrubs there. But yeah, so his form of transportation was a bike, and he would somehow deliver pizza on that bike. Very confusing.
Good for him.
But like, so when I think of scrub, I think of like doesn't have transportation.
Yeah.
Or like manage it. Like the other thing though is in Portland, depending on if you live downtown or even here, right?
Sure.
Like, and you have kind of like a system for how you get around, then I think that's a little bit different, right?
Well,
or if you're in like Boston.
I was gonna say people in New York, when I lived in Chicago, like you don't need a car. Having a car is such a big expense because of parking when you're there. And even just parking at your own damn apartment.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't have cars, but I mean, speaking generally for I guess everybody outside of these major metropolitan areas.
Yeah. But I feel like transportation for me is a big one. What's the other thing? A job. That's important.
Well, so he had a job. He had a bicycle. Did he want to move up into management? Did he want to get another? Was he in school trying to get another job? Like
he was chilling.
Okay.
Did
he sell drugs? I feel like a lot of pizza guys also sell drugs.
I don't think this particular one sold drugs. Okay. Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
But then also like the massive amounts of roommates thing was a big one for me. But again, then we look at like people who are in like San Francisco,
right?
And might again be like or even like what Austin's hopefully probably not, but
it will
starting to look at where like housing is just so expensive. But it's kind of maybe looking at kind of the way all of those things tie together.
Yeah.
Right. And like what that path looks like. What I think too, like a scrub. When I think of a scrub, I don't feel like they have a ton of goals. And it's not that everybody has to have like the goal to do
5-year plan
or this or that or whatever, but like something.
Right.
Like I feel like people in general like should be working towards something or have some sort of goals. And
beyond waking up in the morning.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times scrubs just are chilling.
They're content with mediocrity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
No scrubs here.
We don't want no scrubs.
Do you have any other like personal like experiences that you would share?
I'm trying to think, but some of the situations that I'm thinking of are more. It's less that someone was like, oh, they were a scrub, and it's more kind of a mix of some of those other like personality traits and things. So I don't think of that, or they had like one of the things we've talked about because anyone could have any of these things, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing off the top of my head that specific.
Yeah, I feel like since the mentioned boyfriend, I've gotten a little bit more cognizant when it comes to identifying some of these things. And even I mean, even just on the apps, like I'm honestly skeptical of dudes that say they're an entrepreneur. Like I am. Like, what do you do?
I will say though, like in Austin,
It's very common.
but there are a ton of people who are entrepreneurs here, you know? So I'm saying like I do agree with you, especially again coming from Portland, where that often also meant drug dealer.
But there's also successful and
Right.
driven entrepreneurs, and there's like, oh, I inherited my dad's pizza shop.
That's true. That's true. But if you're running a pizza shop, probably not a scrub.
Are you running it well?
Let's say you are. Let's say
All
hypothetically
right,
you're
if
running
you're
it well.
running it well, then I would say you're cool. But if you're like, if you inherit a pizza shop and you're just kind of running it to the ground, you're probably a scrub.
I don't know. I think that's most of my thoughts there. One thing we have not mentioned yet is our upcoming event.
True, true. We should wrap with that.
Yeah.
So this is going to be super exciting. August 21st, y'all mark your calendars. We will, at some point, depending on when you listen to this, be getting some more details and some graphics out on our Instagram. But PM Jams, Paul Miller from our Shit Guys Say, is hosting an event at Wanderlust Wine Company with our dear friend Sammy, and it's called Lo-Fi and Wine. So it's going to be art, music, wine. Our friend Lindsay is going to play as well. And then you said Nicole.
Yeah. Nicole, our friend, is going to be showcasing some of her art, which is
Mm-hmm.
super cool. She hasn't done a show yet, so she's excited. Um, and then we're gonna be there.
Of course. Well, yes. I'm like,
But we're going to be doing a live podcast.
mhm.
We'll definitely be very interactive.
Yeah,
We'll figure out exactly what that looks like, but we're really, really excited for that event.
yeah. And best part, tickets are only $10. So honestly, if you can't afford that, you're probably a scrub. Was that mean?
uh, isn't everything we do?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, on that note, where can people find us?
At Swipe and the City across all platforms. Michelle, where can people find you?
At mcraigpdx on Instagram mostly.
At Marie R. Carlson, also mostly on Instagram.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.